The sun was setting over the sprawling glass mansion perched on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Orange and pink hues painted the sky as a sleek black car pulled into the circular driveway. Thomas Reed stepped out, his expensive suit slightly wrinkled from the long flight. At 42, Thomas had built an empire from a small tech startup in his garage to a company worth billions. His dark hair was sprinkled with gray at the temples, and fine lines had formed around his eyes from years of late nights staring at computer screens. But for all his success, Thomas felt hollow inside. It had been 8 months since his wife Lily had passed away during childbirth, leaving him alone with their daughter Sophia. The joy of becoming a father had been overshadowed by the devastating loss of his partner of 15 years. Thomas loosened his tie as he walked through the grand entrance of his home. The marble floors echoed with his footsteps, the vastness of the space making him feel even more alone. He had cut his business trip to New York short, unable to bear another night away from Sophia. His little girl was the only light in his life now. "Mr. Reed, you're back early." His house manager, Mr. Chen, appeared from one of the hallways, surprise evident on his face. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow evening." Thomas gave a tired smile. "I finished up sooner than expected. How's Sophia?" "She's well, sir. She should be having her evening feeding now with Ms. Parker." Thomas nodded. Ms. Parker was the head nanny he had hired from an exclusive agency that catered to wealthy families. She came with impeccable references and a degree in child development. She was efficient, punctual, and professional, perhaps too professional. Thomas couldn't help but notice how she kept Sophia at arm's length, as if caring for her was just another task to check off a list. "I think I'll go see her before I settle in," Thomas said, already heading toward the nursery wing of the house. The hallway leading to Sophia's room was lined with artwork Thomas and Lily had collected during their travels, a painful reminder of the adventures they would never share again. As he approached the nursery, he slowed his pace, hearing something unexpected: singing. A soft melodic voice was coming from his daughter's room, a tune he didn't recognize with words in a language he couldn't understand. Thomas paused outside the partially open door, peeking in without making his presence known. What he saw made him freeze in place. Sophia was being cradled in the arms of Amara Okafor, one of the newer members of his household staff. Thomas had only spoken to her a handful of times since hiring her 3 months ago. She was in her mid-30s with warm brown skin and a gentle smile. She worked as a housekeeper, keeping the east wing of the mansion immaculate. What was she doing in the nursery? Amara was seated in the rocking chair by the window, holding Sophia close to her chest while feeding her a bottle. The baby's eyes were fixed on Amara's face as she sang. Tiny fingers wrapped around one of Amara's. The scene was striking in its tenderness, so different from the practical, detached way Ms. Parker handled feeding time. Thomas should have been angry. There were strict protocols in his household. The nanny was solely responsible for Sophia's care. The housekeeping staff weren't supposed to interact with his daughter unless there was an emergency, and yet he couldn't summon any anger as he watched the peaceful scene before him. For the first time in months, Sophia looked content. His daughter, who usually fussed and squirmed during feedings, was calm and relaxed in Amara's arms. Thomas had never seen her this way with Ms. Parker, or even with himself when he tried to feed her. "You are such a good girl," Amara whispered to Sophia, her accent lilting and warm. "So strong like your father, so beautiful like your mother must have been." Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. "The world can be hard sometimes, little one," Amara continued, unaware of his presence. "But you will face it with courage, I think, and you will know love even though your mother watches from heaven now." Sophia made a small gurgling sound and Amara chuckled softly. "Yes, I agree. That is very wise for someone so small." Thomas stepped back quietly, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what to make of what he'd just witnessed. On one hand, Amara had clearly overstepped her duties. On the other hand, his daughter seemed happier in her care than he'd seen since Lily died. He retreated to his office, deciding to think before taking any action. Once inside, he sank into his leather chair and rubbed his tired eyes. His initial instinct was to follow protocol, remind Amara of her place and ensure it didn't happen again. That's what Miss Parker would expect. That's what his house manager would advise. But something held him back. The image of Sophia's contentment lingered in his mind, as did questions about Amara. Who was this woman who showed such natural care for his child? Thomas turned to his computer and pulled up the staff files. Amara Okafor, 35 years old, originally from Nigeria. Prior to working for him, she had been employed by several other wealthy families in similar housekeeping roles. But what caught his eye was her education. She had a nursing degree with a specialization in pediatrics from the University of Lagos. This didn't make sense. Why would a trained pediatric nurse be working as a housekeeper in his mansion? Thomas dug deeper, accessing her visa information and background check. The story became clearer as he read. Amara had come to the United States 5 years ago with her son, Dio. Her nursing credentials weren't recognized here without additional certifications, which required money and time she didn't have. She had taken domestic work to support herself and her son, who was now studying engineering at a state university on a partial scholarship. Thomas leaned back in his chair, taking this information in. A qualified pediatric nurse had been working in his home for 3 months, while his daughter was being cared for by someone who treated childcare like an academic exercise rather than a labor of love. The intercom on his desk buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. Mr. Reed? It was Mr. Chen. Ms. Parker is asking if you'd like to see Sophia before her bedtime routine begins. Thomas hesitated before responding. Tell Ms. Parker I'll see Sophia in the morning. I'm tired from my trip. Very good, sir. Thomas stared out the window at the darkening sky. The household would be settling into its evening routine now. Ms. Parker would be putting Sophia down for the night with her usual efficiency. Amara would be finishing her duties in another part of the house, perhaps thinking about her own son, far away at college. He found himself wondering how many times Amara had held Sophia before tonight. Had it been happening regularly? Did Miss Parker know? Did his staff keep other secrets from him? Thomas thought about confronting Amara immediately, but exhaustion weighed heavily on him. Tomorrow would be soon enough. He needed time to decide how to handle this situation. Whatever he chose to do would have consequences, not just for Amara and his household staff, but for Sophia. As he finally headed to his bedroom, Thomas passed by the nursery again. The door was closed now and all was quiet. Ms. Parker would be in her adjoining suite, monitoring the baby through the expensive camera system he had installed. Thomas stopped for a moment, his hand resting on the nursery door. Inside was the most precious thing in his world. A tiny life entrusted to his care, a living reminder of Lily. He had thrown himself into work after her death, delegating Sophia's care to professionals he thought were the best money could buy. But tonight, he'd seen something that money couldn't purchase: genuine affection. The kind of care that came from the heart rather than a textbook. Tomorrow he would talk to Amara. Tomorrow, he would figure out what was best for Sophia. For the first time in months, as Thomas finally lay down to sleep, he felt a small flicker of hope that things might get better. That the cold, empty feeling that had taken residence in his home since Lily's death might someday be replaced with warmth again. What he didn't know was that his conversation with Amara would change not only his daughter's life but his own in ways he could never have imagined. Thomas woke early the next morning, the California sunshine streaming through the gaps in his curtains. He had slept better than he had in months, despite the surprising discovery from the night before. As he showered and dressed, he kept thinking about the image of Amara holding Sophia, singing to her in that gentle voice. He made his way to the kitchen, where the household chef was preparing breakfast. The staff moved with practiced efficiency around him, a well-oiled machine that kept his life running smoothly. Yet Thomas suddenly felt like a stranger in his own home, wondering how much of the daily life here he was unaware of. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," said Mrs. Lopez, his longtime chef. "Would you like your usual breakfast?" "Yes, thank you," Thomas replied, settling at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room. "Is Ms. Parker up with Sophia yet?" "Yes, sir. They're in the nursery. Ms. Parker mentioned Sophia was fussy this morning." Thomas nodded, sipping the coffee that appeared before him. "And the rest of the staff?" "Most are beginning their morning duties. Mr. Chen is handling a delivery at the gate. Amara is cleaning the East Wing guest rooms." Thomas noticed how Mrs. Lopez called the housekeeper by her first name, while the nanny was always Ms. Parker. It was a small thing, but it suggested something about the relationships within his household. that he had never paid attention to before. After breakfast, Thomas headed to his home office and called for Mr. Chen, who appeared promptly, tablet in hand. "Good morning, sir. How was your flight yesterday? I have your schedule here." "I want to talk about something else, Mr. Chen," Thomas interrupted. "I'd like to know more about Amara Okafor." If Mr. Chen was surprised by the request, he didn't show it. "Ms. Okafor has been with us for 3 months, sir. Her work has been exemplary. She's thorough, punctual, and has received no complaints." "That's not what I mean," Thomas said, leaning forward. "Last night I saw her in the nursery feeding Sophia." Now Mr. Chen looked uncomfortable. "I see. I wasn't aware of that, Mr. Reed. I'll speak with her immediately about respecting boundaries." "Before you do," Thomas held up a hand, "I'd like to know if this has happened before." Mr. Chen hesitated, his usual composure slipping. I'm not certain, sir. Please be honest with me," Thomas said quietly. "I'm not looking to punish anyone right now. I just want to understand what's happening in my home." The house manager took a deep breath. "There have been occasions when Ms. Okafor has assisted with Sophia, usually when Ms. Parker is on her break or dealing with other matters. How did this arrangement start?" "It wasn't an arrangement exactly," Mr. Chen explained. "About a month ago, Ms. Parker was on a personal call during her break time. Sophia was crying in her crib. Ms. Okafor was cleaning nearby and went to check on her. She managed to calm Sophia quickly, and Ms. Parker was okay with this." Mr. Chen looked down at his tablet. "Not entirely, sir. There have been some tensions between them. Ms. Parker has complained that Ms. Okafor oversteps her position. Ms. Okafor has expressed concerns about—" He trailed off. "Concerns about what?" Thomas pressed. "About Sophia's care, sir. She feels that Sophia needs more physical contact and affection." Thomas leaned back in his chair, taking this in. "I see, and what do you think, Mr. Chen?" The question clearly caught the manager off guard. In the 15 years he had worked for Thomas, he had rarely been asked for his personal opinion. "It's not my place to—" "Please," Thomas said. "I value your insight." Mr. Chen considered his words carefully. "Ms. Parker is highly qualified and follows all the modern childcare protocols. She keeps detailed records of Sophia's development and maintains a clean, stimulating environment." He paused. "Ms. Okafor has a different approach, more old-fashioned perhaps, more intuitive. And the rest of the staff? What do they think?" "The staff? They have noticed that Sophia seems calmer when Ms. Okafor is around. There's been talk." Thomas nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty. Could you ask Ms. Okafor to meet me in the sunroom in 30 minutes? And please make sure Ms. Parker is occupied elsewhere during that time." After Mr. Chen left, Thomas sat thinking. He pulled up the baby monitor app on his tablet, watching as Ms. Parker efficiently changed Sophia's diaper, her movements quick and precise. She spoke to Sophia in the high-pitched voice adults often use with babies, but Thomas noticed there was little eye contact, minimal touching beyond what was necessary for the task. 30 minutes later, Thomas was in the sunroom, a bright space filled with plants that Lily had loved. He heard a soft knock on the door. "Come in," he called. Amara entered, still wearing her gray housekeeping uniform. She stood straight, her expression composed but wary. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Reed?" "Yes, please sit down, Amara." She perched on the edge of a chair across from him, hands folded in her lap. "Last night when I came home," Thomas began, "I saw you in the nursery with Sophia." Amara nodded, meeting his gaze directly. "Yes, sir. You were feeding her, singing to her, yes, sir. I'm sorry if I overstepped." Thomas studied her for a moment. There was no defensiveness in her posture, no nervous fidgeting, just calm acceptance of whatever consequence might come. "Mr. Chen tells me this wasn't the first time." "No, sir, it wasn't." "Tell me how it started." Amara took a breath. "About a month ago I was cleaning the hallway outside the nursery. Sophia was crying very hard. Ms. Parker was on her break on a phone call in the staff room. I went to check on the baby." Her voice softened. "She was so upset, Mr. Reed, red-faced and struggling. I picked her up and she calmed almost immediately. And after that, sometimes when Ms. Parker would take her break, she would ask me to watch Sophia, just to make sure she was safe in her crib. But if Sophia cried," she shrugged slightly, "I couldn't just let her cry. Ms. Parker doesn't approve of you holding Sophia, does she?" "No, sir. She believes in self-soothing. She says picking up babies when they cry makes them dependent. But you disagree?" For the first time, Amara hesitated. It's not my place to criticize Ms. Parker's methods. I'm asking for your opinion, Amara. She met his eyes again. In my country, we believe babies need touch to thrive. Studies show that babies who are held develop stronger immune systems, better brain development. They learn trust. Her voice grew more confident as she spoke about something she clearly knew well. Crying is a baby's only way to communicate. When we respond, we teach them the world is safe. Thomas thought about this. You were a nurse in Nigeria. Surprise flickered across Amara's face. Yes, how did you know? I looked at your file last night. Pediatric nursing. Why didn't you mention this when you applied for the housekeeping position? The agency said it would seem like I was overqualified, she explained. They said families want housekeepers who will stay, not leave for better opportunities. And would you? Leave for a better opportunity? Amara looked down at her hands. My son is in his second year of engineering school. His scholarship covers only part of his expenses. I need steady work to help him finish his degree. She looked up again. I take pride in my work here, Mr. Reed, whatever task I am given. Thomas nodded slowly. The picture was becoming clearer. What do you think of Sophia's current care routine? Again, Amara seemed reluctant to speak freely. Please be honest, Thomas encouraged. I won't hold it against you. Sophia is clean, fed, and safe, Amara said carefully. Ms. Parker is very organized, but babies need more than schedules and development exercises. Mr. Reed, they need connection, love. She spoke the last word softly, as if unsure how it would be received in this house of wealth and order. Thomas felt something twist in his chest. Love. It was what had been missing since Lily died. Not just for Sophia, but for him too. I apologize again for overstepping, Amara said into the silence. If you wish me to leave, I understand. Leave? Thomas blinked. No, that's not why I wanted to speak with you. Before he could continue, the door to the sunroom opened and Ms. Parker appeared, her tall figure rigid with disapproval. Mr. Reed, I was told you wanted to see me, she said, her eyes darting suspiciously between Thomas and Amara. Actually, I'm in the middle of a meeting with Amara, Thomas replied. We can speak afterward. I see. Ms. Parker's lips thinned. Well, I should inform you that Sophia has been unusually fussy this morning. I believe it's because her routine was disrupted yesterday. Thomas caught the accusatory glance she threw at Amara. Thank you. Ms. Parker, I'll come see Sophia soon. After a moment of awkward silence, Ms. Parker left, closing the door with a bit more force than necessary. She doesn't like me very much, Amara said with a small smile. I'm getting that impression, Thomas replied, finding himself smiling back. It felt strange on his face, unfamiliar after so many months of grief. As he looked at Amara, Thomas realized he had a decision to make, one that would affect not just his household staff dynamics, but more importantly, his daughter's well-being. And perhaps, though he wasn't ready to admit it yet, his own. After his conversation with Amara, Thomas spent the rest of the morning in his home office, trying to focus on work but finding his thoughts constantly drifting back to what he had learned. Around noon, he decided to check on Sophia himself. When he entered the nursery, Ms. Parker was sitting in a chair by the window, scrolling through her phone while Sophia lay on a playmat, surrounded by educational toys. The baby was batting half-heartedly at a hanging mobile, making small sounds of frustration. How is she doing? Thomas asked, kneeling down beside his daughter. Sophia's eyes lit up when she saw him, and she reached out her tiny hands. She's been quite fussy today, Ms. Parker said, putting her phone away and standing up. I believe she might be starting to teeth, though it's a bit early. I've been documenting her behavior patterns in the app. She gestured to the tablet on the side table, which displayed a complex chart of feeding times, sleep periods, and diaper changes. Thomas picked up Sophia, who immediately grabbed at his tie. Has she been eating well? She took most of her morning bottle, Ms. Parker replied. Though not as much as yesterday. As I mentioned earlier, I think her routine was disrupted. There was an edge to her voice that Thomas hadn't noticed before, or perhaps it had always been there, and he hadn't been paying attention. I understand you sometimes ask Amara to watch Sophia during your breaks, he said, keeping his tone casual as he bounced his daughter gently. Ms. Parker's posture stiffened. Only to ensure someone has eyes on her when I step away briefly. It's not part of the housekeeping staff's duties to interact with Sophia. I've made that clear to everyone. And yet Amara seems to have a way with her, Thomas said, watching Ms. Parker's reaction carefully. Mr. Reed, she began, her voice taking on a lecturing tone that Thomas realized she often used with him. Modern childcare is based on establishing consistent routines and boundaries. Having multiple caregivers with different approaches is confusing for an infant, especially one who has already experienced the trauma of maternal loss. Thomas felt a flare of irritation at the clinical way she referred to Lily's death. What makes you say Sophia has experienced trauma? She was a newborn when her mother died. Research shows that infants form attachments from birth, Ms. Parker explained, as if speaking to one of her childcare certification classes. The absence of the maternal figure creates developmental challenges that need to be managed with proper techniques. Techniques, Thomas repeated, looking down at Sophia's face. His daughter was calm now, studying his features with curious eyes. Is that what you're doing? Managing her with techniques? Ms. Parker drew herself up. I was hired because of my expertise in developmental psychology and early childhood education. My methods are based on the latest research. But do you care about her? Thomas interrupted, surprising himself with the question. Not as a job or a developmental project. Do you care about Sophia as a person? The nanny's expression flickered between surprise and offense. Of course I care about Sophia's well-being. That's why I follow proven methods rather than outdated practices based on sentimentality. Thomas nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place in his mind. Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Parker. Would you mind giving me a few minutes alone with my daughter? Ms. Parker hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Of course. I'll use this time to prepare her lunch. After she left, Thomas sat in the rocking chair with Sophia cradled against his chest. He thought about what both women had said. Ms. Parker with her charts and developmental milestones. Amara with her belief in touch and trust. He looked around the perfectly arranged nursery. Everything was top of the line, carefully selected by an interior designer who specialized in children's spaces. Educational toys sorted by developmental stage. A sound machine with settings for optimal sleep. An air purifier humming quietly in the corner. Yet despite all this perfection, the room felt sterile. There were no family photos, no handmade items, nothing that spoke of love or connection. Thomas realized with a pang that he had allowed his grief to create this emptiness. He had thrown money at the problem of raising Sophia without her mother, hiring experts instead of being present himself. I'm sorry, little one, he whispered to his daughter. I've been so lost without your mom. Sophia reached up and patted his cheek with her small hand as if forgiving him. Thomas felt tears threatening and blinked them away. He spent the afternoon with Sophia, canceling his video meetings and letting the world of business wait. He fed her lunch himself, laughing at the mess they both made. He lay on the floor during her tummy time, making faces that caused her to giggle. For the first time since Lily died, Thomas felt truly connected to his daughter. When Sophia finally went down for her afternoon nap, Thomas called Mr. Chen to his office. I need to speak with Ms. Parker and Amara, he said, separately. Please ask Ms. Parker to come here first, then Amara 30 minutes later. Mr. Chen nodded, his expression carefully neutral. Yes, sir. Ms. Parker arrived promptly, dressed as always in her practical but expensive clothes, her posture perfect as she took a seat across from Thomas's desk. Ms. Parker, Thomas began, I want to thank you for your service over these past months. She smiled thinly. Thank you, Mr. Reed. I strive to provide the highest standard of care. I believe you do, Thomas agreed. But I've been thinking about Sophia's needs, and I've realized that they may not align with your approach. The smile vanished. I'm not sure I understand. I've decided to make some changes to Sophia's care routine, Thomas said carefully. I want her to have more physical contact, more affection, less focus on schedules and developmental benchmarks. Ms. Parker's eyes narrowed slightly. With all due respect, Mr. Reed, that approach is not supported by current research in child development. Children thrive on consistency and clear boundaries. Perhaps some children do, Thomas acknowledged, but I know my daughter, and after spending time with her today, I believe she needs something different. This is because of the housekeeper, isn't it? Ms. Parker said, her professional demeanor slipping. Mr. Reed, just because she holds the baby and sings to her doesn't mean she understands proper childcare. There's science behind what I do. I don't doubt your qualifications, Thomas said. But I've learned that Amara was a pediatric nurse before coming to this country. She has medical training and experience with children. A foreign degree that isn't even recognized here. Ms. Parker scoffed. Versus my master's in early childhood development from Stanford. Thomas leaned forward. Ms. Parker, this isn't about credentials. It's about connection. When I watch you with Sophia, I see competence. When I watch Amara with her, I see love. He paused. And that's what my daughter needs right now. The nanny's face flushed. So you're firing me? Because I don't sing lullabies and coddle her? I'm making a change, Thomas said firmly. The agency will honor your contract. You'll receive 6 months' salary as severance, and I'll provide an excellent reference. But yes, your services will no longer be required after today. Ms. Parker stood up, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. You're making a mistake. That woman has manipulated you, playing on your emotions. She saw an opportunity to advance herself, and she took it. That's enough, Thomas said quietly. You can pack your things and leave by the end of the day. Mr. Chen will assist you with anything you need. After she stormed out, Thomas took a deep breath. He knew he'd made an enemy, but he also knew he'd made the right decision. He checked the time. Amara would be arriving soon. When she knocked on his office door, Thomas called for her to enter. She looked nervous as she took the same seat Ms. Parker had occupied minutes before. Thank you for coming, Amara, Thomas said. I've made some decisions I wanted to discuss with you. Amara nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Yes, sir. I've let Ms. Parker go, he said, watching her reaction. Surprise crossed her face, followed by concern. Because of what I did? Mr. Reed, that wasn't my intention. It wasn't because of you, Thomas interrupted gently. It was because of me. I realized that the kind of care she provides isn't what Sophia needs. It isn't what I want for my daughter. Amara relaxed slightly. I understand. Will you be hiring a new nanny? That depends, Thomas said. I'd like to offer you a different position in my household. Her eyes widened. Sir? I'd like you to become Sophia's primary caregiver, he said. Not as a housekeeper who helps out, but officially. With a salary that reflects your qualifications and experience. Amara sat very still, as if afraid to believe what she was hearing. My qualifications aren't recognized in this country, she said softly. I don't care about paperwork, Thomas replied. I care about who you are and how you care for my daughter. I've seen that with my own eyes, he smiled. Besides, I have some connections at the state medical board. I believe we can work on getting your nursing credentials transferred if that's something you'd be interested in. Tears filled Amara's eyes. Mr. Reed, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Thomas said simply. Sophia needs you, and I think... He hesitated, surprising himself with his next words. I think I need you too. This house has been so empty since my wife died. Today, for the first time, it felt like there might be hope for happiness again. Amara wiped her eyes and sat up straight. Yes, she said with quiet dignity. I accept your offer. I will care for Sophia as if she were my own. Thomas felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a weight he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. Sometimes the most unexpected moments lead to the most important changes, and sometimes the most valuable people come into our lives in the most unexpected ways. 3 months had passed since Thomas made the decision to replace Ms. Parker with Amara as Sophia's caregiver. The change in his household was remarkable. The once cold, silent mansion now echoed with baby giggles and soft lullabies. Sophia was thriving under Amara's care, meeting developmental milestones ahead of schedule and growing into a happy, secure little girl. But the transformation wasn't limited to Sophia. Thomas had changed too. He no longer buried himself in work from dawn until midnight. Instead, he made sure to be home for dinner, bath time, and to tuck Sophia into bed each night. On weekends, he declined business trips and networking events to spend time with his daughter. Sometimes Amara would join them for walks in the garden or picnics by the pool, sharing stories of her childhood in Nigeria and teaching Thomas simple lullabies in her native language. Thomas watched from the doorway as Amara gently rocked Sophia to sleep, singing softly. At 11 months old, his daughter now had a head full of dark curls and an infectious laugh. She reached for Amara whenever she entered the room and called her Mama, a development that had initially caused Thomas a pang of grief for Lily, but which he now accepted with grace. Sophia needed a mother figure, and Amara had filled that role with love and devotion. She's finally asleep, Amara whispered, carefully laying Sophia in her crib. She fought it as long as she could, Thomas smiled. She's stubborn, like her mother was. They stepped out of the nursery together, leaving the door slightly ajar. These quiet moments after Sophia's bedtime had become a cherished routine. They would sit in the living room, have tea, and talk about the day. You seem tired, Amara observed as they settled onto the sofa. Was your meeting difficult? Thomas sighed, loosening his tie. Not difficult, just eye-opening. I met with the head of the children's hospital today. The one where we're funding the new wing. The one named for Lily? Yes. Thomas took the cup of tea Amara offered him. Dr. Zhang gave me a tour of their current facilities. They're doing incredible work with very limited resources. Amara nodded. Healthcare for children should be a priority everywhere. She also told me something interesting, Thomas continued. They have a severe shortage of pediatric nurses. Apparently, it's a nationwide problem. It's the same in many countries, Amara said. Even with training programs, there aren't enough people with both the skills and the heart for the work. Thomas watched her over the rim of his cup. That's what Dr. Zhang said too. She mentioned they've been trying to recruit internationally, but the process is complicated. Visa issues, credential transfers, licensing requirements. Yes, Amara agreed, a shadow crossing her face. Many qualified medical professionals come to this country only to find they cannot practice without starting their education over. So they take whatever jobs they can find instead. Like housekeeping, Thomas said quietly. Amara met his gaze. Like housekeeping. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Thomas had been thinking about this issue for weeks now, ever since he started the process of helping Amara get her nursing credentials recognized in the United States. The bureaucracy was maddening, the costs substantial, and the hurdles seemingly endless, even with his considerable resources and connections. I had an idea today, he said finally. What if we created a program? A foundation to help foreign-trained medical professionals get certified to work here? Amara's eyes widened. A program? Yes, it would provide financial assistance, obviously, but also navigation through the paperwork, preparation for exams, language support if needed, mentorship, job placement. His words came faster as his excitement grew. We could partner with hospitals like Dr. Zhang's that desperately need skilled staff. It would be a win for everyone. The healthcare system gets qualified professionals. The professionals get to use their training, and patients get better care. That sounds wonderful, Amara said, her voice warm with approval. But also very ambitious, Thomas laughed. Building a tech company from scratch was ambitious too. But this feels more important somehow. Because it would help real people, Amara suggested. Not just make money. Exactly, Thomas set down his cup. And I was thinking, if you were interested, you could help develop it. Once your certification comes through, of course. You understand the challenges better than anyone I could hire as a consultant. Amara looked stunned. Me? But I'm just a highly trained pediatric nurse with years of experience who had to work as a housekeeper because of a broken system. Thomas finished for her. Who better to help design a program to fix that system? Tears shimmered in Amara's eyes. You would trust me with this? I trust you with my daughter, Thomas said simply. This is much less important. Before Amara could respond, Thomas's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It's my lawyer. I should take this. He stepped into his office, closing the door behind him. The call was brief but unsettling. Ms. Parker is threatening to sue, his lawyer explained. She's claiming wrongful termination and is demanding a much larger settlement than the severance you provided. On what grounds? Thomas asked, frowning. She's alleging that you fired her because of her race and replaced her with Amara because you were involved with her. Thomas felt a cold anger sweep through him. That's ridiculous, and offensive to both Amara and me. I agree, his lawyer said, but Ms. Parker has apparently been speaking to some tabloid reporters. She's threatening to go public with these allegations if we don't meet her demands. She's trying to extort me? Essentially, yes. She knows a public scandal would be damaging to your company's image regardless of the truth, Thomas thought quickly. What does she want? $2 million and a non-disclosure agreement. That's absurd. It is, the lawyer agreed. But fighting this in court, even if we win, would generate publicity that might harm Sophia. And Amara, Thomas's jaw tightened. The thought of Amara facing public scrutiny and racist insinuations made his blood boil. And the idea of Sophia growing up with this kind of tabloid story following her was unacceptable. "I'll call you back," he said, ending the call. When he returned to the living room, Amara was standing by the window, gazing out at the moonlit garden. She turned when he entered, and something in his expression must have revealed his distress. "What's wrong?" she asked. Thomas hesitated. He didn't want to burden her with this ugliness, but he also respected her too much to hide it. "Ms. Parker is causing some legal problems," he said carefully. "Nothing we can't handle, but it's unpleasant." Amara studied his face. "Because of me?" "No," Thomas said firmly. "Because of her. She's making accusations that are completely false." "About you and me?" Amara guessed softly. Thomas nodded, not surprised by her perceptiveness. "She's threatening to take the story to the tabloids if I don't pay her off." Amara's expression hardened. "And if she does?" "Then we fight it," Thomas said. "I won't give in to blackmail." "But your reputation is less important than the truth," Thomas interrupted, "and less important than your dignity." Amara looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You would face a public scandal rather than allow her to spread lies about me?" "Of course," Thomas said, surprised by the question. "Amara, you're—" He trailed off, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. In the soft lamplight, her eyes shone with emotion. "I'm what?" she asked quietly. "Important to me," Thomas finished, his voice low. "To us, to Sophia and me." Something shifted between them in that moment. A possibility that had been hovering just below the surface for months. "Thomas," Amara began, then stopped as the baby monitor on the coffee table crackled with Sophia's fussing sounds. The spell broken, Amara stepped back. "I should check on her." Thomas nodded, both relieved and disappointed by the interruption. "Yes, of course." As Amara headed toward the nursery, Thomas called after her. "Amara?" She turned back. "Yes, thank you. For everything you've done for us." Her smile was soft in the dim light. "It's my pleasure." Later that night, Thomas lay awake in bed thinking about Ms. Parker's threats and what they revealed. Not about Amara or himself, but about the assumptions people made when they saw a wealthy, white man and a black woman from another country, forming a connection, the realization that was slowly taking shape in his heart, that his feelings for Amara went beyond gratitude or professional respect, would face scrutiny and judgment from the outside world. But Thomas had built his fortune by seeing value where others didn't, by taking risks when opportunities presented themselves, and by trusting his instincts about people. And his instincts told him that what was growing between them was real and worth protecting. Whatever challenges they might face, they would face them together, for Sophia's sake, and perhaps for their own. 1 year later, Thomas stood at the podium in the newly constructed atrium of the Lily Reed Memorial Children's Hospital wing. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, illuminating the crowd of medical professionals. Donors and media gathered for the grand opening. At the front of the audience sat Amara, looking elegant in a deep blue dress with Sophia, now a lively toddler of almost 2, perched on her lap. Thomas cleared his throat and began his speech. "Thank you all for being here today. This hospital wing is special to me for many reasons. It honors my late wife, who always had a soft spot for children in need. But it also represents something more, a new beginning, a different way of thinking about healthcare and the people who provide it." He gestured toward the side of the atrium, where a smaller sign read New Horizons Program. Alongside this new medical facility, I'm proud to announce the official launch of the New Horizons Program, which will help internationally trained medical professionals overcome the barriers to practicing in this country. In just our pilot phase, we've already helped 30 doctors and nurses from 12 countries receive their U.S. certification. Applause rippled through the crowd. Thomas caught Amara's eye and she smiled with pride. This program had been their shared vision, built from the ground up over countless late nights and weekend strategy sessions. "Many of you have asked why this cause matters so much to me," Thomas continued. "The answer is simple: because talent and compassion know no borders. Because sometimes the most qualified person for a job isn't allowed to do it due to paperwork and bureaucracy. And because one day a year and a half ago, I discovered that the best person to care for my daughter had been cleaning my house for months, unable to use her medical training because the system made it too difficult." Murmurs ran through the audience as people connected the dots. Thomas had never publicly shared the full story of how Amara came to be Sophia's nanny, though rumors had circulated after Ms. Parker filed her lawsuit. That lawsuit was dropped. By the way, Thomas added with a wry smile, causing a ripple of knowing laughter. When faced with actual evidence rather than manufactured outrage, the claims fell apart. But the experience taught me something important about perception and prejudice. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. When people saw a wealthy white man hiring a black immigrant woman to care for his child, they made assumptions. When that woman went from housekeeper to nanny, they made more assumptions. What they failed to see was the simple truth, that I recognized talent, dedication, and love when I saw it. That I made a decision based on what was best for my daughter, not what would look proper to outsiders. Thomas glanced again at Amara and Sophia. His daughter was playing with Amara's necklace, completely oblivious to the significance of the moment. Amara, however, was watching him with eyes that shone with unshed tears. Today, I'm proud to announce that the first director of the New Horizons program will be Amara Okafor, who recently completed her U.S. nursing certification with honors. No one understands the challenges these medical professionals face better than she does. No one is better qualified to help them navigate this journey. The applause was enthusiastic. In the front row, Amara ducked her head modestly, but Thomas could see her beaming with pride. And one more announcement, Thomas added, his voice softening. On a more personal note, last week Amara agreed to become my wife. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Amara's hand went to her mouth in shock. They had agreed to keep their engagement private for a little longer. But Thomas was tired of hiding, tired of worrying what people might think. He loved this woman who had brought light back into his home and heart, and he wanted the world to know it. After the ceremony, as donors and hospital staff mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, Thomas found Amara in a quiet corner. Sophia had been whisked away by Mr. Chen, who had proven to be a surprisingly doting unofficial grandfather figure over the past year. "You didn't tell me you were going to announce our engagement," Amara said, but she was smiling. Thomas took her hand, feeling the simple diamond ring he had placed there just days ago. "I'm tired of caring what people think." "Are you mad?" "No," she admitted, "but I was surprised. You've always been so protective of our privacy." "I realized something," Thomas said, leading her toward a bank of windows overlooking the city. "Hiding our relationship only gives power to people who would judge us. I'm not ashamed of loving you, Amara." She squeezed his hand. "Nor I you." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant colors. "Have you heard from your son?" Thomas asked. Amara's face lit up. "Yes, Dio called this morning. He got the internship at the engineering firm. He'll be able to stay in the country after graduation." "That's wonderful news," Thomas said sincerely. He had never met Amara's son in person, though they had spoken many times over video calls. The young man was currently finishing his final year of engineering school on the East Coast. "Will he be able to come for the wedding?" "He wouldn't miss it," Amara assured him. "Though he still thinks it's strange that his mother is marrying a billionaire." Thomas laughed. "I imagine it would be." "Does he approve?" "He says as long as you make me happy, he has no complaints." Her expression grew more serious. "But he worries about the attention, the scrutiny we'll face." "Because of our different backgrounds?" Amara nodded. "People will talk. They already do. Let them," Thomas said firmly. "What matters is what we know to be true." Before Amara could respond, they were interrupted by Dr. Zhang, the hospital director. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, "but there's someone I thought you both should meet." She gestured to a young woman standing slightly behind her, dressed in scrubs. "This is Patricia. She just completed her certification through your New Horizons program. She's starting here next week as a pediatric nurse." The young woman stepped forward shyly. "I wanted to thank you both personally. I trained as a nurse in the Philippines, but had been working as a home health aide for the past 3 years. Without your program, I would never have been able to afford the certification process." Amara reached out and took the woman's hands in hers. "We're so proud of you. This is exactly why we created the program. You've changed my life," Patricia said simply, "and now I can help change others." After she left, Thomas wrapped an arm around Amara's waist. "Moments like that make everything worth it, don't they?" Amara nodded, leaning into him. From housekeeper to program director, Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life now. Believe it, Thomas said. You earned it. All I did was recognize what was already there. Later that evening, they returned home to find Sophia already bathed and in her pajamas, courtesy of Mr. Chen, who had become an indispensable part of their unconventional family. The older man discreetly retired to his quarters after giving them a detailed report on Sophia's evening activities. Thomas and Amara tucked Sophia into bed together, a nightly ritual they both cherished. The toddler was drowsy but insisted on her favorite bedtime story, the tale of how her father had found Amara singing to her that fateful night. And then what happened? Sophia asked sleepily, though she knew the answer by heart. Then your daddy realized that sometimes the most important things are right in front of you, Amara said, smoothing the little girl's hair. Sometimes you just need new eyes to see them. And then you became my new mommy, Sophia mumbled, her eyes drifting closed. Yes, little one, Amara whispered. Then I became your new mommy. After Sophia fell asleep, Thomas and Amara retreated to the terrace outside their bedroom. The night was warm, the sky clear and filled with stars. In the distance, the lights of the city twinkled like earthbound constellations. Do you ever think about how different things might have been? Thomas asked, pouring them each a glass of wine. If I hadn't come home early that night? If I hadn't seen you with Sophia? Amara considered the question. I believe some things are meant to be, she said finally. Maybe not in a magical way, but in the sense that when good people recognize goodness in each other, beautiful things can happen. Thomas raised his glass in a toast. To recognizing goodness when we see it, Amara clinked her glass against his, and to having the courage to embrace it. As they sat together under the stars, Thomas reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From grief to joy, from emptiness to fulfillment, from strangers to family. The world would always have its opinions about them, the billionaire and the former maid who became his wife. But Thomas knew the truth that mattered. Sometimes the most precious treasures are found in unexpected places. Sometimes the most important decisions are made not with spreadsheets or strategies, but with the heart. And sometimes the thing that shocks everyone is simply the recognition of love in its purest form.